So I'm going to pass the mic, so to speak, over to Mr. Shane Scott. Thank you for being here, Shane.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that introduction. And it sounds like we've got some awesome people on the phone, or I guess on the Zoom meeting. So just from the people that introduced themselves. So just a little background, I'm really a serial entrepreneur, venture capitalist. And I've spent my life building companies and selling companies. I got interested probably like we all have a story of how we got our entrepreneurialism or how we got into doing coaching or whatever it is you guys are doing. Anything where it sounds like a lot of you guys are already in the space of assisting people or performance-based type scenarios. And my story is basically just, I think at a young age, I really wanted to be successful. And I believed that there was some secret. And I read the book, Think and Grow Rich, like a lot of people may have. I got really interested in the whole self-help type world. In fact, at one point in my bedroom in high school, I had every inch of my room filled with some sort of a quote, some sort of a positive quote, believing that maybe while I slept, all of that stuff went into me via osmosis or something. But just really interested in this idea of being able to be somewhat, superhuman in the sense of being able to tap into something. Like it always seemed like there was something there. And when you read other people's success books and so forth, they're always talking about something that, other than just hard work, there was something else there. And so it took me on a very interesting journey. And the journey was really became more of a journey into, I'll say a journey into my heart. It was more of a spiritual journey. And I studied in college. Again, I'm an entrepreneur, but I took one philosophy class and I was hooked. And I ended up getting a college degree in philosophy. And I think while studying it, I did an emphasis in religion, which just fascinated me because how people perceive God and the world just kind of fascinated me. So I ended up later getting a doctorate in theology, just out of interest and passion. But I've been working with people for the last 20 plus years on, you could say, mindset, but I call it transformation. And I create a clear distinction between transformation and self-help. We know that self-help is a $13 billion industry. And there's a lot of information out there. And it seems like if self-help actually worked, we wouldn't be living in the world that we're living in. It's self-help provides a lot of powerful tools for people to operate in life and operate in business. The challenge is that it operates under the premise that there's something wrong and you need to fix it. And so self-help will teach you how to become better, where transformation will teach you that there is no such thing. Transformation comes from for me, comes from more of an Eastern type philosophy of learning to accept that everything is okay in this moment and starting from a completely different premise. So I like to call it a context. And I think what I provide for people is a different context to live their life inside of. And I'll just give you just a brief overview of what that context is. And if people were to live their life inside of this context, they would experience transformation. And transformation, again, is basically experiencing life instead of living in the story of life. And I'll be a little bit more specific about that. In that, I feel like a lot of people live life with inside of the story of life, where life is happening, but then we're telling a story about what's happening when it's happening. And very rarely do we ever actually experience what's happening when it's happening. And a lot of that's due to just the construct of our mind and how it works. And we're meaning making machines. Maybe some of you have heard that phrase before, where something happens in life and we have to make it mean something. And we're constantly trying to understand life where at some point we're robbing ourselves of actually experiencing it. And so the transformational process that I take people through is one where they get out of their mind, so to speak, and into their heart, so to speak, where they learn to become the observer of life and the observer of their experiences instead of identifying with their experiences. And so when I talk about a context, we all have contexts that we live in. Religion provides a context. Your community provides a context. There's some sort of a context you live inside of maybe your family dynamic. And that context is really just the set of rules or axioms or beliefs that you're going to operate inside of. And so I like to take that and imagine a context of being a little bit even grander than that for what we're talking about. And if you guys could imagine a big, gigantic, say, glass bowl, just pretend I'm holding a big glass bowl, and this glass bowl can be as big as it needs to be. And let's just suppose that we were going to start putting everything we could think of inside of that glass bowl. Can people respond, I guess?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So if we could put anything in this glass bowl, and let's just say anything in the observable universe, what could we start with? What could we put inside this big, gigantic glass bowl? Be
family.
Yeah, put your family in the glass bowl. What else?
Fish.
Fish. Let's put all the fish in the glass bowl.
Your goals, can it be that? Can we have that? Okay.
Yeah, put all your goals in the glass bowl. What else?
Oh, comfort items like blankets and stuffed animals.
Absolutely. You guys are good. Absolutely. What else?
Can I put some food in that bowl?
Do what? Say
Can I
that.
put some food in that bowl?
Food? Sure. Let's put food.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Let's put all the food in the bowl.
We can
My
put also
dog.
our purpose.
What's that?
Our purpose. Can we put it in? Like what we
Yep.
think? Well, okay. Our purpose.
Yeah. Let's put our purpose in the bowl. In fact, let's just put all of our thoughts in the bowl.
Okay.
All of them. What else can we
How about
put?
love?
You could put love. Now, love depends. The idea of love or the infinite source of love. That might be difficult to put in the bowl, but we can put our ideas about love in there.
You say you could put relationships or
All your relationships.
Relationship.
Yeah. Let's put all your relationships in the bowl. What else?
My dogs.
We can put your dogs in. Let's just go ahead and put all the dogs in the bowl.
Okay.
I'm not sure if Chris's beard would fit in the bowl, but that probably
Yeah.
make
We
it.
should put everybody's beard in the bowl.
Yeah, coconut oil for the beards.
Let's just
obviously.
put everybody's body in the bowl.
Okay.
So eventually, let's put all your possessions in the bowl. Let's put everybody's possessions in the bowl. Let's put not only our bodies, but every body that's ever been on this planet, ever will be on the planet. So we could just keep going and going and going, but eventually we could just take the whole earth. And let's say we take the whole earth and put that in the bowl. And then what? What's after the earth? What else could we put in the bowl?
Could we put aliens?
Universe.
Yeah, let's put aliens in the bowl.
I was going to say all the stars and galaxies.
Yes, let's do that. Let's put it all. So let's just say we're going to put everything in the observable universe in the bowl, and the observable universe is 14 billion light years in any direction. And we're going to take everything we know and we're going to put it in that bowl. So now that we have all of that in the bowl, what's the bowl?
Our perspective.
Yeah, I mean, sort of. I mean, your perspective is a matter of thinking. So we put all your thoughts in the bowl.
Well, if we're putting everything in the bowl that we're thinking of, wouldn't it be like life as we know it, or from our, as from how we see it, kind of like what you was mentioning earlier?
Yeah,
In our,
but we're going to put that in the bowl too, because that's just our perceptions.
oh wow, okay. Well then,
We're
yeah,
gonna
I
put
don't know.
everyone's perceptions in there. Yeah. So there's something that allows for all this stuff to exist. And the question is, what is that?
Energy.
Okay. There's energy, absolutely. I'm looking for something a little bit more specific that involves energy.
Purpose.
Well, we're going to put that in the bowl.
Dang, everything's going in the bowl. What's left?
I know. We got to figure out what holds all of this. What allows this all to be?
Ooh, I'm sorry. Let me shut up. I'm gonna say one more thing. Our will.
Intention, faith.
A little bit.
In the bowl.
So just remember, all of this stuff exists because this bowl has the ability to hold it, to contain it. So what
Mass?
contains everything, huh?
Mass?
Mass?
What Eric said, divine. I was thinking the same thing. Divine, God.
Okay. But God in what sense? I mean, a lot of people think of God, and if God's a thought, then we
Faith.
can't put that in there. What is?
Can it be faith?
Well, that's a matter of thinking.
Like-
So
Okay.
Atoms.
And we
like-
got two more things in the chat. Sandra says source, and VJ says soul.
yeah, so both of those source. So, but what is the source? That's what we're trying to determine.
But doesn't it depend on the faith everyone has? Like everybody's viewpoint is different. Like God, universe, source.
Yeah, it's really a simple answer, but sorry, my table I've got this on.
Life.
So I just want you to imagine all of this stuff in the universe and inside of this bowl exists because of what? What allows it to exist?
Thought manifested.
What's that?
Movement.
Man,
The
Thought
thought that
manif-
manifested it.
okay. But there's something beneath that. So let's go one layer deeper than that. And let's just say consciousness. But connected to consciousness is you. So you allow it all to exist because you're consciousness. So without you, none of that would exist. So a famous philosopher by the name of Rene Descartes, in answer to the question, is there anything you could know of a surety? Rene Descartes responded, I think, therefore I am. You guys familiar with that statement? I think, therefore I am, which became a very popular, profound thought for hundreds of years. And what Rene Descartes did is he realized that as he sat and pondered that the fact that I'm thinking must mean that I am, I'm alive, I'm a person. And so for hundreds of years that stood until another philosopher came along and said, no, wait a second. I think, therefore I am. There's two different I's in that statement. There's the one that thinks, and then there's the one that observes. So denoting that it's impossible to be a thinker without someone or something to observe it, which then starts to make the argument for consciousness. That in order for there to be thought, or in order for there to be anything in the material world or physical world, there has to be something to observe it, which means there has to be something other than thought, which would suggest that you're not your thoughts, and that your thoughts wouldn't even exist unless you were able to observe your thoughts. So what I feel like I assist people in waking up to is learning to realize that they're not their thoughts to begin with, and that we talk about thoughts as being a powerful tool, and a powerful tool inside of creation. But there's something behind that. There's an energy behind that. And that energy is you. So when I work with people who are building companies and wanting to create success, what I'm sharing with them is that the outside world is always a mirror of their inside world. And that the outside world is a direct manifestation of what's going on inside energetically. What people tend to do is they want to go world and shift things and fix things because they assume that that's the source. And so if I want to make more money, some people might think, well, I got to work harder. I got to do this. I got to do that. They have a whole list of things that's got to be done. But what they don't realize is that if they don't shift what's going on inside, that which is a real source of power, that the outside world will just continuously give them situations that create those challenges, create those stumbling blocks. So I think the golden question I ask people in the beginning of any conversation I have is really, what do you want? I ask people, what do you want? And that's the golden question to me, because what they say afterward and how they answer that question tells me how they perceive the world and what they perceive they don't have. So I'll give you an example of that. I walk into a business and I say to them, you know, what do you want? What can I do? How can I help you? And I'm sure many of you guys play that role. And I walk into a company, and this is a real true story. It was a company in Salt Lake City, Utah. And I walk in with all the business executives and ask them, you know, what can I assist you with? And they said, well, we want to become a $15 million annual company. Like, we want to do 50 million in gross revenue. I said, oh, okay. How much are you doing right now? And they said, well, we do about 50 million, or sorry, we do about 10 million in gross revenue. And they say, are you open to the possibility that what you really want is to do 10 million in gross revenue? And of course they look shocked and say, no, we want to do 50 million in gross revenue. And I said, well, why aren't you doing 50 million in gross revenue? And from that point forward, they tell me all the reasons, excuses, and circumstances for why they're not doing 50 million in gross revenue, and all the things that have to happen, and all the basically the stumbling blocks. And then after I write those on the board, I step back and say, well, based on results, you're more enrolled into those reasons and excuses than you are into being a $50 million annual company. And of course, that still creates confusion. But what I'm pointing out is that wherever you put your energy, that becomes your reality. So your thoughts are one thing, but the energy behind your thoughts essentially is what creates your world and what creates the stumbling blocks. And with the same company, when I began to work with them, they ended up later on signing a contract that was valued at $100 million. And it wasn't an annual contract. And it wasn't even on the radar. It wasn't even something they were even thinking about. It just showed up. And I see that happen all the time in life, and I'm sure you guys do too. But what I try to get at with people is to realize, again, where the source of power comes from, where the source of creation comes from. It comes from inside of them and not outside of them. And so typically when we're building a business or we're challenged to do something, we think to ourselves, well, what must we do in order to accomplish this? And very rarely do we ask the question, who do I have to be, or who do I get to be in order to accomplish it? Like, what energy do I get to align myself with such that I attract that into my life? And so, again, it's going against oftentimes the grain of how we're taught to operate. And there's lots of different books and different things out there that teach these principles, but I still find like it doesn't land for people to where it becomes something that they can actually apply. And so, again, I'm working with people to get in contact with that sense of source, become that observer, begin to um, really tap into that power. Now, the thing is that sense of power is beyond mind, which means that your mind doesn't have the ability to really understand it. It's really this interesting phenomena. And when I usually speak with people, the first thing I say to them is that I'm here to share something with you, first of all, that you already know. So I'm not here to teach you anything you don't already know. It's just a matter of whether you've accessed that knowledge. And then the second is I tell people not to believe what I'm teaching them, because I don't want this to live in the world of belief. I want it to live in the world of experience, because if it's in the world of experience, now you've tapped into something, and you may not understand it. But typically that's what our mind does, is our mind wants to understand everything. So we take infinite concepts and we make them finite, like an infinite concept of love. We take an infinite concept and we want to make it mean something. We put it inside of a box. So when someone asks us, what's love? We have an answer, or we have an answer for ourselves. But love is beyond an answer. It's something you can experience. It's not something you necessarily understand. We could say the same thing with the concept of God. It's not something we necessarily understand, but it's something we can experience. Well, a lot of people live inside of their beliefs about God as if that was the absolute truth. And the absolute truth can't be your belief system, because your belief system is fallible. And it doesn't have the ability to contain concepts that are infinite, because it is in itself finite. So our mind is a very powerful tool, but it's not the source of truth. And we tend to use it as a source of truth. So I just want to give you guys a little outline of a context, the context that you can live inside of. And if you just lived inside of that context, you would experience transformation. And I'm kind of going through this fast. So I'm anticipating I'm speaking with a group that would pick this stuff up pretty quick, and probably some of you guys might even teach some of these concepts. I'm just going to share with you how I teach it and apply it, so to speak. So the context, I want to give you 5 things, 5 rules, 5 axioms that you will live by. And the first one is this: there are no accidents. There are no accidents, which means essentially that life cannot be different than the way it is. It's absolutely impossible. You can't be sitting anywhere other than where you're sitting. You can't have more or less money in your bank account. Life in your relationships can't be different than the way it is. It's absolutely impossible. Only in your mind can you think the thought that life could be different, because life is what it is, and there are no accidents. But too often we live in the world like, I could have done this different, or I should have done this different. And when you say things like that, what you're essentially saying is that something's wrong. Something's wrong. And somewhere in all of our lives, we got the message that something's wrong. And unfortunately, we got the message that something's wrong with us. So when you get that message, you naturally want to fix something, change something. There's something wrong. So if there's something wrong and you need to fix it, and you're constantly working on fixing it, the problem is it doesn't work. You never actually fix it, because you'll always find that there's something else to fix. You're never going to be complete. There's always going to be something you're working on, some goal to obtain, somewhere to go, something to get to. You'll never actually arrive anywhere. There'll always be a gap between where you are and where you want to be. And so that gap always leaves you with the sense of emptiness. And if you just focus on what the energy of if there's something wrong, what's the energy of that? How do we approach life in the energy of there's something wrong? We're constantly in judgment of life. We're constantly looking at life like, it shouldn't be this way. It should be that way. I'm sure, again, there's lots of examples you guys can think of. Something happens and you think, man, I shouldn't have done that. But the truth is you should have done it, because you did do it. And you can always handle reality What you can't handle is the idea of the illusion where there's something wrong and you need to fix it. So if you just lived inside of your life like there were no accidents and began to see the life like it's unfolding perfectly, and there is a cause for every effect. In every circumstance, there's a cause for every effect. And so that's the first one. There are no accidents. So, and again, we could go a lot deeper into that. I just want to go over this, and then maybe we'll see where we're at with time and questions. So the second one is this: you are 100% responsible for your life's experience, which means you essentially are the cause of the effects that you experience in life. If you're looking for the source, it's you. Now, having studied philosophy and religion and all those different things, and just history in general, throughout millennia, people have been looking for the cause. What's the cause? What's the source? That's the number one asked question and the number one subject sought after is what's the cause? And so for millennia, humans have been looking for what's the source? How do we do this? Well, throughout religion, we've come up with God as the source, but the problem is we have multiple different gods that do multiple different things. And in some philosophies, within that one philosophy, there's multiple gods. And then there's other, monotheistic and polytheistic and animism and all sorts of different ways of viewing God. And so still we're asking the question, what's the source? And then we ask, if God's the source, then where did God come from? There's all these questions that we try to get at to try to figure out this life and figure out how we fit inside of it. But ultimately, what I'm establishing, and we can go through a whole way of how we establish this, is that you're the source. It's you. And I'm not talking about your thinking you or the character you play. I'm talking about what's beyond the character, what allows the character to actually even exist. That sense of you that's consciousness, that is that connection to source or enlightenment or to God or to love or to joy or anything that's infinite. And so as you are the source of life, the problem is the way that we live inside of life is that something else is always the cause. It's always a reason, excuse, or circumstance. So we live in a world of what I would call false causes. And a false cause is mistaking an effect as a cause. So for example, something happens and let's just say, a relationship of yours that you're close to comes home or you meet up with them or whatever, they say something to you and you find it very offensive. Now, two things happened. One is somebody said something, and then the second thing is you found it offensive. They're never the same thing. They're always separate things. And we're always living in the world like something else is causing life being the way it is, or causing my inner experience of life. And if that's true, then you need circumstances and reasons and excuses to be happy. You need circumstances, reasons, excuses to be wealthy. You're always looking for the outside world to provide you with what you feel you need in your inside world. And we're constantly feeling or believing like it's the outside world that is creating our inside world. So I'm upset because I have this reason, excuse, or circumstance. And so maybe to further illustrate this, I like to distinguish the difference between a choice and a decision. So a choice is being completely responsible for what you choose. So to be completely responsible for what you choose means that you make a choice without a reason, excuse, or circumstance. It means you take complete responsibility for it. Where a decision comes from the root word decide, which is, you've heard of homicide and suicide and pesticide and genocide, which literally means to cut off. So when you make a decision, you cut off all other possibilities. But also, I define decision as making a choice based on a reason, excuse, or circumstance, which means that you're giving up your power to something else. You're making it about the reason, excuse, or circumstance. So when you make a choice, you take complete responsibility for it. When you make a decision, you make it about a reason, excuse, or circumstance. So is that clear? Does anyone feel like they get that? I can only see a picture of one of you, and
Yep.
it's the
Yep.
it's the MMA fighter. So I can only see one. I'm not a big. Let's see if I figure out Zoom. Okay, now I see everybody. So the MMA fighter nodded his head and said he gets it, right? The distinction. Okay, so I'm gonna test you on it. All right. That's Clifford. So Clifford, I have 2 imaginary ice cream cones. Can you see them?
Yes.
Okay. One is chocolate, one is vanilla. I'm going to invite you to make a choice based on how I defined a choice. And I can redefine it if you want me to. But based on how I define choice, I'm going to invite you to make a choice. Okay? So chocolate, vanilla, choose.
Vanilla.
You chose vanilla. Is that correct?
Yes.
Why did you choose vanilla?
Because I wanted it.
Okay, so you chose vanilla because you wanted it. Is that correct? Is that a choice? Yes. Is that a choice or a decision?
Yes, it's a
Based
decision.
on how I defined it. And why is it a decision?
Yeah. Because I cut off my ability to have chocolate when I chose vanilla.
No. So it doesn't have to do with the choices at hand. It has to do with whether you're being responsible with what you choose or not. So I see Eric over there shaking his head. So it's a decision because you used your preferences to make the decision. The fact that you want it, the fact that you prefer it is more powerful in this sense. You're giving your power to that over just choosing it. Right? So to make a choice means you make a choice without a reason, excuse, or circumstance. It means you be completely responsible for what you choose. So let's do it again. Chocolate, vanilla, choose.
Vanilla.
So you chose vanilla. Why'd you choose vanilla? You're just to be completely responsible.
Complete responsibility.
Without a reason, excuse, or circumstance.
Just to be.
Okay, so how would you choose it? You chose it because
Felt right, like the right thing to have.
right? But now you're using your preferences again, your feelings.
Yeah.
Without criteria, how does a choice not become arbitrary?
Well, in this sense, I'm just asking somebody to take full responsibility for what you choose. I'm not saying that you don't have preferences. I'm not saying that you don't make choices based upon those types of things. But too often in life, we give so much power to our preferences and don't realize that our power to choose is really our source of power. It's not. We don't need reasons and excuses and circumstances to make a choice. And I'll illustrate that further in just a minute. But in this case, if based on how I defined it, if you're just to choose and be completely responsible for what you choose, and he chooses vanilla, and I say, why do you choose vanilla? What would be the most responsible response to that question?
Because
Have you done this before? What's that?
Because I choose vanilla.
Yeah. That's it. You choose it because you choose it, right? That would be the most responsible response to that question. And you're taking full responsibility for it. But now let's look at this. Anger, happiness, choose.
Happiness.
Choose, Clifford.
Happiness, because I choose happiness.
Right. You choose happiness because you choose happiness, but we don't live in that world, do we? Our mind doesn't live in that world. We're looking constantly for reasons, excuses, and circumstances to be happy. And so we're always looking for reasons, excuses, and circumstances to get what we want in life. And choosing it, we could just choose it and be completely unreasonable, which means you can be happy for no reason at all. You don't have to have reasons, excuses, and circumstances. You can just choose what you choose and be responsible for what you choose. And ultimately that establishes you in a space of power, because now you are taking full responsibility. And now you are at cause, which means you're no longer dealing with the effects of life and creating false causes and making the false causes of life the real cause. So the reality is I choose to get upset when I choose to get upset. And then I also talk when I talk. I don't talk when I don't talk. I sit when I sit. I don't sit when I don't sit. I walk when I walk. I don't walk when I don't walk. I do what I do when I do it, and I'm responsible for my choice. But often in life, we don't live life that way. Inside of our head, we're constantly believing and living in a world where something else is at cause. Something else is responsible for my life being the way it is. I could be happy only if Raylan would be nice to me. No, I need Raylan to be nice to me. So we're talking about the difference between being a creator and being a victim. And most of our life and most of our language is victim language. We're talking like something else is more powerful than you or me. Nothing is more powerful than you, because you are the source. And if you are the source, then you're creating it. And if you're creating it, the only way to really deal effectively with life is to take responsibility for your own creation. And so to be 100% responsible for your life's experience means that I'm at cause. I'm responsible for what I choose. Is that clear? We can go a little bit deeper into that in a minute, if you like. So that's establishing our power. The next one is goes along with that, is that I'm whole and complete. So this is a premise that we're going to live in. It's an axiom or a rule that I'm whole and complete, which means that I'm enough now and life is perfect now. I developed a program working with people who struggle with addiction. And I do the orientation. And during the orientation for the first hour, it's a 2-hour orientation. For the first hour, these guys think I'm crazy. It's a men's program. And these guys think I'm crazy because I'm essentially telling them that there's nothing wrong with them. And by the end of the second hour, they realize that they're crazy, that they're the ones that created this world where there's something wrong with them. And they've done nothing but fight to be right about it and create scenarios in which they're always, the person that needs help, or they're inside their addiction. And a lot of us live again in the world like one day we're going to be good enough. And I'm here to share with you, there is no one day. This is the only moment you have. It's the only moment that actually exists. If you start living your life realizing that you are enough now, and that everything you ever wanted or need is already there for you, that you just get to tap into it. What happens then is that we then close that gap that we're always living inside of. And again, my background is studying in theology, and inside of theology, there's always that gap. In most, especially Western type theologies, there's always that one day, someday, and you gotta fill that gap, or you're not going to get what you want, or you're here and God's there, and there's always that gap between you and God. And to close the gap is to realize that the gap is not real. It's not real at all. It's just a construct of your mind. And your mind lives in a constant state of avoiding. It's not really comfortable in the present moment. It's always living in the future or the past. So if you get that there are no accidents, and you get that you're responsible for life's experience, and you'll get that life must be perfect now. Like there's nothing wrong, and you're okay. You're always okay. It's just a matter of you finding that inside of yourself. It doesn't mean you can't have goals. It doesn't mean you don't strive for things. It just means that whenever you arrive at whatever that end goal is, it's not going to make you better or worse. That who you are is already enough. And then again, if you operate like that in the world, then you're more likely going to accomplish those goals, because you don't sell out to the stumbling blocks that are in the way, the stumbling blocks that you put in there. And some of those stumbling blocks is just your own perceptions of you, how you perceive you. Like you're not enough. A lot of people go out to create things in the world to try to fill a gap inside of themselves. But if you can fill the gap without using the outside world to fill it, then you're no longer a victim. You're no longer a victim. You can live as that powerful creator. So you're whole and complete. You're enough now. And if you start with that premise, I promise you'll find that in your conclusion. You'll also find that life and the way it occurs to you will shift. How you take on challenges will shift. Once you get that you're enough now. So another one is you don't know what you don't know. This is number 4. There's things that you know, and there's things that you know that you know. There's things that you know that you don't know. There's a whole world that you don't even know that you don't know. It's a whole world of possibility. And typically when we're challenged in life, we just go to what we know. And it's not until we're really challenged and backed into a corner do we start to really consider other possibilities. And I'm sure every one of you guys have had an experience where you didn't know what you were going to do in a circumstance, and all of a sudden something came up or something arose and something happened and you weren't even considering it, and it all of a sudden opened a door for you that you didn't even know what was possible or you weren't thinking about. And then my question is why wait until you're backed into a corner to have that experience? Why not approach the world as if it has infinite possibilities, and approach all your challenges, all your goals, all the things you want to accomplish as if it's 1, it's already happened, and 2, it's absolutely a vast world of possibilities, and that so much so your mind can't even contain it. And one illustration of that is that we just took wherever you are in the world right now, and you took an aerial view of where you were, and then you zoomed out and you kept zooming and kept zooming. Eventually you'd find that you're sitting on a speck of dust somewhere in the middle of a galaxy inside of a gigantic universe. You're literally on a rock that's just rotating, and it's microscopic. And so it's amazing how much we think we know, and how vast compared to how vast the universe is. We really don't know anything. We know very, 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 very little. And there's this whole world of possibility to discover. So if we live in that space that I don't know what I don't know, it opens you up to that world of just being open to possibilities and being willing to let go of things that aren't working in your life. Belief systems and different things that we hold on to, that we think is the absolute truth. So you don't know what you don't know. And the last one is this: the only way out is through. The only way out is through. There is no other way. The only way out of pain is through the pain. The only way out of anything is through. So you guys are familiar with the sport of baseball, right? I think that sport's used as a life analogy more than any others. I coached this last season. I coached T-ball. Has anybody ever watched a T-ball game? So, you know, here you have a bunch of kids that it's their introduction to baseball. But what are T-ball players like? Well, first of all, where do they go when they go out to the field? They all go into the infield, right? No one needs to go to the outfield. They're all in the infield. So you've got like 15, 20 kids all sitting in the infield. Where do they stand? Just wherever they stand. And what are they typically doing? Maybe playing in the dirt or staring at their glove, or they look at their friend and they think, well, I got a hat. You got a hat. Well, I got a glove. You got a glove. Look, we're baseball players. We're playing baseball. Well, here are kids 100% committed to their experience, living in their experience. That they have no judgment of their experience. They're not thinking about the past or the future. They're just 100% committed to the experience that they're having. And what happens is one kid hits the ball, and who goes and gets the ball? Well, they all do. And when someone gets it, they grab it and they hold it up in the air and say, I got it, I got it, I got it. And the coach is yelling to them to throw it, and they throw it. You know, the coach probably says throw it to first base, but they don't know what first base is. They just turn and throw the ball. And then the kid running the bases, does he stop? Now he runs from first, and he goes to second, and he goes to third, and he runs home. He gets an infield home run off of a ball that went 3 or 4 yards. But you know what? It doesn't matter. There's no judgment. They're living in their experience. It's 100% commitment to that moment. And they're just in their experience, and they're in joy, and they're fun to watch. It's a fun experience to have. But as life goes, we all started out like that, by the way. We all started out with that state of innocence. We all started out with that state of, I'll call it perfection, where life was okay and we were okay, and we could use our imagination to become and be anything, and we were honest, and we just had that sense of innocence. So what happens in life? What happens in life is we begin to grow up, and let's just use baseball, and we go from T-ball to maybe coach pitch to machine pitch, and then eventually kid pitch. And once you get into kid pitch, the stakes get a little bit higher. And I have a son that started out in T-ball, and then by the time he got to kid pitch, you know, one time he was up to bat and he struck out. And it was no big deal. It was just he's playing baseball with his friends, and you know, there was nothing really big on the line. It wasn't a championship or anything like that. And on his way back to the dugout, he was just of the attitude that, you know, I gave it my best effort, and now it's your turn, whoever's up next. Well, the person walking by him said to him, you suck. And so when you're a kid, you don't really rationalize. You just feel things, and you feel energy. And that was the energy of maybe not being enough. And all of a sudden, he feels that energy. And what do we typically do as humans? Well, we want it to mean something. Why do I feel this way? And first of all, the fact that you feel that way, you assume that there must be something wrong with you, because it's happening inside of you. And I don't want to feel this way. And so you begin to think, well, I guess, you know, if you don't succeed in life, that means that you're not good enough. And so what my son did at that moment is he quit baseball, because baseball presented him the possibility of not being good enough. And that was his response to it. He said, I just won't play it at all. So he quit. But then he started on a pattern where because he didn't want to feel that way, every time there was an opportunity for him to potentially suck or fail, he quit before he actually failed to save himself from that humiliation of possibly failing. However, what he got was nothing but failure. And so when we use, again, baseball as an analogy, what happens in life when we don't get back up to bat? When we're unwilling to fail, we're unwilling to feel worthless. What happens is that now we're stuck with worthlessness. There's nowhere for it to go. So the only way out is through. The only way out of worthlessness is your willingness to experience it. It's the only way out. You can't avoid it. It's absolutely impossible. You'll take it everywhere you go. You'll begin to organize your life in such a way to make sure you never feel that way, which is absolutely exhausting. But that's what we do as humans, is we don't want to feel certain ways. But we don't realize that part of being human is feeling unworthy. It's part of it. And if we're unwilling to feel unworthy, we'll never know what worthiness feels like. Because worthiness is not a possibility unless we're willing to feel unworthy. And so, again, using baseball, if I were to get up to bat, any baseball players here? Anyone ever play baseball? So a couple of people raised their hands. Some guy sort of played baseball. What's it like if you get up to baseball and you don't want to strike out? What's going on in your body?
Yeah, you're super tense and nervous and,
Yeah.
constricted.
And so when you're constricted, what happens to your response time?
It's trash. It's not good.
Slows down,
Slows it
right?
down. Yeah.
So if you're unwilling to strike out, you're going to be more likely, you're more likely going to strike out, right? But what if you're willing to strike out?
Yeah.
What if you look forward to striking out? Then you're
free.
loose.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're loose, you're relaxed, and now you're less likely going to strike out. Now let's just apply that to life. In life, one thing is that there's always the possibility that what you don't want to feel, you might end up feeling. And if you're unwilling to feel that way, then you're likely going to just, propel yourself towards that, because you've heard, and I know that you know that what you resist persists. And what you fight, you make stronger. So if you're constantly in a state of resistance, all you're doing is attracting that which you don't want. And that works perfectly. So you can't say that there are accidents. That works absolutely perfectly. But the problem is we think that somebody or something else is doing it, and that's just not true. You're doing it. You're creating it. You're responsible.
Hey, Shane, sorry to cut you off, but I wanted to leave a little bit of time for questions.
Yeah.
Is going to push back about 10 minutes. We can leave some room for questions, because I know if anyone's like me, when I first heard you speak, I was completely, again, confused and feeling as if I don't know who I am anymore. So I want to leave a little bit of time for some questions, if that's okay. So does anyone have anything for Shane about what we talked about today? And maybe Joe, go ahead.
Yeah, first of all, thank you, Shane. This has been super helpful, connecting a lot of dots for me. And one question that comes up is just clarity. So you're saying that we are going to experience a feeling of unworthiness, fear, those types of things, and we should accept that and be 100% okay with that, because the only reason we're experiencing that is to go through that, to feel the other feeling. Is that like a correct assumption? Because like what I like about this is it seems, you know, the point of I'm whole and complete. So you're saying that when I feel unworthy, I am whole and complete in that very instance because I'm existing. Like that's where I'm.
Yeah. So let's make this quick distinction. And the distinction is this, is that the only way it's possible for you to even feel unworthy is if there's something to observe that unworthiness. Okay. So you, who you are, is that consciousness. So you're never really unworthy. You can only ever have the experience of being unworthy. So once you create that distinction, you're now no longer unworthy. You're just having that experience. And if you're willing to have that experience, you don't identify with it, you're not stuck in it anymore. So you're just the one having the experience. So the part of you that's having the experience is absolutely whole and complete. It's unchangeable. It's perfect. The part of you that's feeling unworthy, that's just an experience that your character's having. But you're not your character. You're the one having the experience of the character. So that I appreciate you asking that, because that's an important distinction to make. Is that, as you know, if I like to use the movie Avatar, if any of you guys ever seen that movie, you know, if you think of the guy, you know, gets inside this avatar, goes out into this other world, he's really sitting in a pod, and he's actually doesn't have use of his legs, but in this other world he does. The longer he's in that other world, the more he forgets that he's the guy in the pod, and that world becomes its reality. And so what I'm saying is that in a way, we're living inside an avatar. And somehow, the longer we've been inside of this avatar, the more we've identified with the avatar and forgot that we're not actually the avatar. We're just living inside of the avatar, having the experience that the avatar is having. But we're not the avatar. We're the one that, without us, that avatar would not exist. And the experiences wouldn't exist because we're the source behind it all.
Shane, we got 2 more questions. I think Rocky, you were first, and then Karina.
Yeah, so I had I'm going back to the point you made, and I just want to make sure that it was clear because I do have a question around it. Point number 2, where you said you are the cause of the effects that happen to us. What about the things that we can't control, or the things that are out of control that happen to us?
Well, there's lots of ways to look at it. One is that I'm going to try to give short answers so we have time. But one is that you know, if you look at life and realize that things happen in the world, and let's just say, I was talking with a guy the other day that got in a motorcycle accident. He says, "You're telling me I'm the cause of that?" And I said, "Well, let's just look at it from this perspective. If you would have entered that intersection 1 second before you got hit, would you've gotten hit? No. How about 1 second after? No. So in a world of infinite possibilities, you just happen to be in that moment. And there's all these other possibilities that could have taken place. Now, I don't think he consciously, mentally said, today I want to get hit by a motorcycle or hit by a car on my motorcycle. But somewhere, somehow, our higher selves are always in the creation process. So there might be things that we go through in life that could be horrendous and traumatic, but somewhere I'm open to the possibility that our higher self knows what it's doing and knows where we're going and knows what's next. And life doesn't necessarily look exactly the way that we think it's going to all the time, and that's part of what it is to be alive, is to live in a world where there's surprises, to live in a world where you know, we don't know. That's what almost creates the adventure of life itself, is the fact that we don't always know what's around the corner.
So is it safe to say that we should tap into our higher selves in order to get that distinction prior to making every move? Not every move, but just having, I guess, that intuition and stuff.
But and you probably know that. And I mean, our intuition is something that we don't spend a lot of time focused on. We don't spend a lot of time meditating. We don't spend a lot of time, maybe you guys do, I don't know. I'm just saying in general, people don't spend a lot of time going inside and connecting inside and then trusting the voice inside. Because your head is often going to be contrary. Just your ego is almost your nemesis, but you can't make it your nemesis, or you'll just reinforce your ego. But it's that part of you that puts the limitations on you. That's that part of you that creates this need for survival. But somewhere, to answer your question, at some level, if we're going to really be responsible for life, we have to take responsibility for everything, not just some things, because then that becomes arbitrary and subjective, and we don't know what should we be responsible for, and what should we, when are we a victim? We've got to break that train of thinking if we're going to really experience how powerful we are. And I go as far to say, that we're all God pretending that we're human. We're just pretending.
All right, so we got 3 more. So we only have 6 minutes left, and then I got to get these guys to a bathroom break before Eric goes. And by the way, so Eric, Shane, I don't know how much time you have, but if you have some more time, I would stick around for Eric's session. He talks about the one-liners. He's the guy that is going to write your book. He's already sent me 5 different titles for your book, just so you know. So those that don't know, Shane, how long have you been working on the damn book, Shane?
20 years.
This book.
I know I'm a philosophical writer, so I need
just to
someone else
release you, Shane.
Yeah.
So just to release you, Shane, there's a lot of intuitive writing. You currently have 25, almost 30,000 words of your book finished. Of us, 50,000 books. So you don't need to stick around. I just need to catch up.
Yeah. Okay, great.
All right. We have Karina, Chris, and I thought we had one more. I think Tim had a question too. I think there was I love
mine's more philosophical. It's going to take up time, so I'll just roll my hand for now.
Nah, it's all good, man. So Karina, go ahead.
Hey, Shane, it was a pleasure to hear you. So I just have a question focused on number 5. The only way out is through. Do you feel that when we are in that mentality that if we don't succeed, we're not enough, does it have to do with control, with trying to control every part of our life, every part of what we do? That's my question.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and control it comes from our ego, and it comes from the sense that we don't feel like we're in control. So we try to overcompensate by trying to control things. And so we're not surrendering to things. So I just want to be really clear that surrender doesn't mean you give up. Surrender means that you're allowing what is to be what it is, because you're fighting it doesn't change it, right? It doesn't change it. If the river is going a certain direction, you can either learn to go with the flow of it, or you can fight it the whole time. And that's typically what we do in life, as we go against the grain. We're always living in a state of resistance to something. And resistance just creates pain, emotional pain. And so a lot of what we experience in life is just unexperienced experiences. They're just things we don't want to experience. And that's the pain. It's that unexperienced experience. So by willing to surrender to it, allow it, then all of a sudden you set it free. And like a river, it begins to flow again. And it provides, other new opportunities and experiences to flow into your life. It's just, we just get stuck a lot. We get stuck in these energetic traps that our mind keeps reinforcing.
So a point on that, Shane, I think is a really good question to ask sometimes, is what am I resisting right now? Taking inventory of where to reallocate those resources, so to speak. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's easy, because that whenever you're challenged, and that resistance will surface. Whenever life will give you plenty of opportunity to find out what's in the way, because you can walk out of the house today and something happens, and all of a sudden it triggers something inside of you. Whenever something's triggered, that just is basically saying, hey, I want to be let go of. I'm ready. Here I am. and that's what you can go into that feeling, into that experience. And so a lot of this, you know, I gave you guys a really quick explanation, but I go into specific detail on how to really learn to surrender and how to apply all this stuff inside of life. So
we're gonna go to Chris next, but just so you guys know, and you can you know, make sure I keep my word on this. But Shane and I, like, Shane has volunteered up his compound in Utah, so we're gonna do a little retreat or something over in Utah. Shane, we got to do that. I'm putting that out in the universe.
We'll do a book signing there.
Yeah, do book signing.
Okay,
I just looking for Eric my whole life.
Generally lead to bad results. I'm just historically just saying.
Yeah.
Shane, by the way, where is that place in Utah that we're going to do the last retreat?
So it's in southern Utah. So where I live is just like the southwest corner of Utah. So I'm 200 miles from, actually I'm 120 miles from Vegas, Las Vegas. And I'm right on the Arizona, you know, Nevada border. And so where I live, it's really beautiful with the mountains and the red rocks and all that. It's an outdoor paradise. You can golf year round. I can go golfing today and skiing today the same day, because I can jump in the car and drive an hour up the road and I'm skiing, or I go golfing. It's an interesting place, but it's a ranch. It's a 160-acre ranch, and I've got there's 34 individual cabins and a couple different event centers. So we do a lot of events and stuff there. I love doing corporate events and things like that. It's a beautiful place, and you kind of just leave the world for a little bit and go kind of get recentered. I consider it a place of healing.
Absolutely. We're definitely doing that. Chris, go ahead with your question. And then once we're done with this, we're going to take a break for 10 minutes so we can all go pee.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks so much, Shane. This was so badass. I identified so much with a lot of this because I teach improv comedy classes to people and to businesses. And so a lot of these concepts I do through improv. Like, there are no mistakes, there are only gifts, and you know, life must be perfect now. So staying really present. So it's just really fun to hear you talk about all these things. So thank you for your time and all that. My question is, I really love the metaphor, the baseball metaphor, that helps it stick in my head a lot. But can you take the metaphor one step further? Like, what's the home run? What's the stolen base? You know, and you know, as far as all these things you're talking about, is there anything that you have for, like, you know, I know what the strikeout is. I know what the you know, the not being afraid to strike out, or being afraid to strike out. So what's the metaphor? What's the translation for hitting a home run?
So let's just look at baseball again as life, and a home run could be whatever anybody wants, essentially, right? Everybody has their own home run, and there's the first base and the second base. But here's the thing about the game of life itself, that too many of us are sitting in the stands watching the game. And when you're in the stands, you have lots of judgments and thoughts about what's happening in the game. And very few people actually step into the game and actually play the game. So this is, so to take that a step further is to say that, you know, in baseball, the game of baseball, the game is being on the field. The game is playing, but not only just playing. It's the energy in which you're playing. So there's playing to win or playing not to lose, right? And playing not to lose is how most of the people in the world play the game. Like, I'm going to do just enough to make sure I don't look bad. Like, and even if everyone else fails around me, I want to make sure that at least I look good. You know, at least I didn't strike out. We lost the game, but at least I didn't strike out, right? That type of attitude, where if we're really playing to win, we want to win. We want everyone to win. And if I want to win, and I'm up to bat, who do I want pitching? Well, I want the guy who's the best pitcher. Why? Because that's the guy I want to hit the home run on. You know, give me the adventure, give me the opportunities, give me the things that in life that I can dive into and have the full experience of it. I don't want to just comfortably coast through it and make it simple and easy. I want the challenge. I want the reward that comes from taking on those challenges. And so it can really be whatever you want it to be. But I think the energy that we approach life in is paramount, and it will determine the type of experience we have in the game of baseball or in the game of life. But what's most important is make sure you're on the field and you're not the guy in the stands making judgments about how everybody else could have done this better, right? Be the one out there doing it.
All right, guys. So here's what we're gonna do. All right. So I know that Chris and Eric, you're right. You have questions. All right. So here's what we'll do. If you need to go to the bathroom, go to the bathroom. If you want to stay and ask a question, please ask a question. But Eric is going to be starting his segment at 9:03 on the dot. So at 9:03, if you're going to the bathroom, whatever, make sure you're in your seat by 9:03 for Eric's segment. And then again, feel free to chime in. I know Cliff, you had a question, and then Eric, I'm going to go pee, and you guys can ask Shane questions. I'll be back.
Hey Shane, appreciate your time. Thank you. And my question kind of is a bounce off of the baseball question, figuring out how to get that home run and everyone's home run being different. I look back at that glass bowl that you talk about putting everything into, and I learned some lessons along my fighter's journey. It wasn't just important how I showed up when I got into the ring, it was also important when I got outside of the ring. And everything's consciousness and perspective. And the more I look at life, the more I realize how much I don't know, as I go through the journey. And I think that's what the journey is. And I just would like your input on the experience of knowing that you don't know, knowing that everyone here that I don't know, I can have the opportunity to know, ultimately knowing more about me.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that it's an important realization to come to if you're going to really experience yourself as something other than your mind, so to speak. It's coming to that realization that your mind can only contain a certain amount of info. So when I talk about the mind and we break it down, we don't ever think about our memory until it fails us. But how much of your life, how old are you, Clifford?
I'm 40.
So you're 40 years old. How much of your 40 years do you actually remember?
Not all of it, obviously, just the really intense moments, those intense experiences.
So how much would that, 40 years, I mean, how many seconds is that? How many hours, how many days? You don't have to answer that. I'm just saying,
yeah.
Out of all of that, how much of those 40 years do you actually remember? I would say it's probably close to 1%.
Mm-hmm.
So out of that 1% of what you remember, how much do you think that is 100% accurate?
Now I'm thinking, but instead of just being, when we talk about being, it's all accurate to me because it's an experience that I've had and that I felt.
Right. But what you remember in the story you tell about what happened, how much do you think that's accurate?
It's not accurate at all. It's only accurate
No,
to my thoughts.
probably 1%. Like,
yeah.
We literally use our mind as a source of truth, and our mind only retains very, very little of what we know, of what we've experienced. But we use that as if that's a great source, and it's not. It's fallible. It's completely fallible. So, again, we're striving to learn to find our. I want to make sure I answer your question. I'm trying to. I forgot how this relates to your question, but tell me your question one more time.
So ultimately, since life is a series of experiences, and understanding the depths of those experiences, learning about. Every time I learn more about someone else, I'm really just learning more about myself.
Yeah, absolutely. And everybody is just a different version of you. And if you really want to know yourself, you'll find yourself in other people. That's your window. I think Eckhart Tolle, it was Eckhart Tolle that said that love is the recognition of yourself in another. So a lot of the work I do is for people to realize that we're not separate, we're connected. And if you're angry at somebody, you're angry at another version of yourself, and that anger came from inside of you, not from them. And you learn the same thing in love. If you love yourself, loving other people is natural, because you see inside of them, versions of you.
So real quick, I know that Hassani had a question too. Want to make sure we get to him. But also Shane's way more nice to you guys. So I had this realization after his talk with me, right? And we're in the car, Shane, and I go, I figured it out. You said there are no accidents. I got paired up with someone that I found to be fucking annoying. She drove me crazy. All right. And then I realized in that moment, it was me. It was a mirror of me. And Shane goes, and I'm thinking he's going to say, you got it. You finally got it. Shane goes, or maybe she's just annoying. I was like, the second that I think I get something, he fucks me up. Anyway, Hassani, go ahead with your question, brother.
So my kids woke up.
Sorry for swearing, by the way, Hassani. I didn't know the kids were there. My bad.
You're fine. It's all good. Basically, that balance between the going to the choice versus decision. Let your sister use that, please. Going from the choice to the decision, relating that to goals and how we're acting on a day-to-day basis. It's almost like we're choosing a goal and detaching. I'm trying to find how that all relates, or how to make that practical and act on it. Is my question making sense?
Yeah. So I just want to be clear, because this does get unclear for people at times. When I talk about choice and decision, I'm only talking about being responsible. I'm only saying be responsible for your choice. You cannot not make a choice. It's absolutely impossible. And also, a decision is an illusion. It's not real, which means that a decision is just making a choice, pretending like you don't have the power to make a different choice, like something else is more powerful than you. It's not real. All you ever do is make choices. And all I'm saying around choice and decision is be responsible for the choice you made. When you get upset, be responsible for you choosing to be upset. Don't make it about the person that you think made you upset. And I use that as an example, but there's so many examples we could use like that, where we give up our power to something or someone else because we assume that they're the source of it. And when we do that, we're basically saying that we're powerless, like we don't have the ability to make another choice, right? So we're taking two things that are not related, and we're collapsing them on each other and assuming that they are related. They're not related. So another example of things that aren't related, like I was talking with someone the other day, and they said, I want to start a business, but I'm scared. I said, well, did you ever notice that being scared and starting a business are two separate things? They're not the same thing. And it's perfectly possible for you to start a business and be scared. It doesn't matter. That's what we do inside of language. Is we take things that are not related and we make them related. Everything is in itself its own cause. And we're not victims to anything. And so really that conversation, again, is just about taking responsibility for what you do choose, instead of saying or pushing the responsibility onto something else. So don't go to your wife and say, if you're married, don't go to your wife and say, hey, you made me upset, because it's not true. She doesn't have the power to make you upset. You get upset when you get upset, and you don't get upset when you don't get upset. So the determining factor is just where you're putting your energy, what you're making it about, right? And you could be happy for no reason at all, just because you chose to be happy. Don't go out and look for reasons to be happy, or reasons to be successful, or reasons to feel abundant. You don't need them. You can just choose abundance. And then what I find is that abundance creates abundance. Happiness creates happiness. Joy creates joy. But the same thing is frustration creates frustration, and anger just perpetuates anger. So whatever premise you start with, you're going to find it somewhere in your conclusion, which means you're going to experience it. So start with what you want. If this is about success inside a business. Well, why don't you go ahead and accept that you have it already? And if you have a trouble with that, look at all the different ways in which you have succeeded and only focus your energy on that. And then just watch and see what happens.